Well, I tell you what, we've interviewed a lot of people around here, but never have I had the opportunity to interview the happiest man on earth. Well, okay, the craziest guy on earth. Well, anyway, one of the funniest guys on earth. We are delighted to have with us today Ken Davis, and I'm sure you've heard him, you've seen him. In fact, if you listen to the Dove radio, you hear him every afternoon during the Jerry Bilden Show with Lighten Up and Live. And he's authored a book called Fully Alive, A Journey That Will Change Your Life by Ken Davis. There's a picture of it there on the screen. And let me encourage you to get a copy of it. Check it out at Evangelist, put out by Thomas Nelson or Barnes & Noble or online at Amazon. It's a fun book. Hey, Ken, thank you for being with us. Nice to see you, my friend.
It is a delight to be with you. I hope you're having a great day out there.
Oh, yeah. This is where the Lord bought his retirement home. All right, tell us about your book, Fully Alive. You make an interesting statement that you have come back to life. Tell us about it.
I have. You know, it's very interesting. Someone asked me how was I inspired to write the book, and my answer was I really lived this. I experienced this. I had a very good career. I was telling people about the good news. I was, you know, living well. I had all of the things that I wanted to have, but there was a deep kind of dissatisfaction and sadness in me. I saw a picture of myself taken on a beach in Destin, Florida. And I looked like a walking manatee. I was 60 pounds overweight. I was holding the hand of a little girl, Jaden, who, had she been caught in the surf, I could not have saved her. I could barely tie my shoes.
Wow.
And it was a horrible snapshot of not just what I had allowed to deteriorate in my physical condition, but what I had allowed to deteriorate in my spiritual life, my social life. I was watching the Olympics the other night, and I thought what had happened basically was I had won some gold medals, and I was sitting on them. I decided when I saw that picture that I had to do something. And it's fascinating to me, Perry, that God triggered a change in every area of my life by starting with a physical change. I signed up to compete in a triathlon, and nothing was the same after that.
Man, wow. You know, there's an old saying, there's two things that bring about change, either inspiration or desperation. Was it both or one or the other?
Yes. It was a little of both. I think that the inspiration, the picture was really a combination of inspiration and desperation. I was fighting overwhelming depression 2 or 3 times a year, and I couldn't figure all this out. You know, that's the stuff that's supposed to happen to somebody that has their head buried in some deep problem that they're dealing with, or they're you know, they've done something wrong, or they've sinned, or and I was really, really very successful. But probably one of the greatest sins of all is when we decide to take it out of gear and coast. You know, when we decide that we don't really need to live fully alive anymore, we're just going to kind of make it to the end. And once that attitude changed, once I experienced what happened as a result of the discipline of training for this triathlon, once I experienced crossing that finish line, it was everything began to change in a kind of chain reaction as a result of that. The book actually points out those events. As I was researching for the books, I realized that all along the way, God had kind of driven stakes in the ground. He had put his hand on me to help me realize, I've got more for you. I've got more for you. I've got more for you. And he wasn't talking about more public success or more money. He was talking about experiencing the power of Christ's resurrection in my life on a daily basis. At 65, actually, I wasn't quite 65 yet when I won. I took second in that triathlon.
Wow. In
my age group. I tell people there were 2 old guys in my age group. I actually beat more than half of all of the people who entered the triathlon. But when I crossed the finish line, I didn't know that. I had tears streaming down my face because I had run well, because I had finished, because I was operating at somewhat of the capacity for which I was created.
Wow.
It was overwhelming. I lost 40 pounds in training. And that inspired me to get down even more to where I was supposed to be. And God has God has completely transformed my life. I have to say with Paul, I really need to say this, because this book isn't an exercise book, or it isn't a book about how I made it and you can make it too. Yeah. I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
I haven't arrived yet. But man, I'm in a journey where I'm pressing toward the mark that Christ called me out for, and it's different than anything in my life. At 65, these are the best years of my life.
Well, Ken, how did this happen? I mean, here you are successful in ministry. How did you get to this point of, well, overweight? I guess we could all figure that one out. But how did you get to this point of being depressed when your persona is the happiest guy in the world? Yeah,
I think that those that are listening to your program that often are in public positions or have a position where they are required to be in front of an audience will recognize that erase that word. We are not exempt. Mm-hmm. I think maybe I thought I was exempt. I think that probably part of the problem was I was leaning on all of that success. I was leaning on my ability to call people to faith in Christ. I was leaning on all of the talent that God had given me. I was leaning on that instead of leaning on Him. You know, Henry David Thoreau said, "Many men lead lives of quiet desperation and go to the grave with their songs still in them." Right. And that's kind of where I was. I had stopped risking. I had stopped leaning on the one that I needed to lean on most of all. Paul said, "I want to know Christ and the power of His resurrection," and I had stopped developing that relationship with Christ. I think there's a lot of pastors. I think there's a lot of people in Christian work. I know because I've done some hundreds of interviews that there are many people working in Christian radio who are experiencing exactly what I was experiencing. And part of the reason is we like Peter, we take our eyes off the one who provides the power to live fully alive. And we start just getting hijacked by making a living instead of living. Wow. And that's what it is. I was sitting on my medals. I was coasting. I was relaxing. I was comfortable. But a comfortable faith and a comfortable life is no faith at all, life at all.
Did you fear death in that condition?
When I was deeply depressed, there were times that I feared death. I was actually so depressed that I almost welcomed it, but it was not an option. And that seemed to be the greatest pain of all, that there was no way out of this. And I remember praying to God, "Please help me and give me a sign, speak to me." In the book, there's a book in the book entitled "Out of the Valley of the Shadow of Death," where I actually found an entry that I had made in my journal. And it is a dark, dark entry that ends with these words, "Please, God, please." And I think that what we tend to expect then is that a flash of light will come and we'll wake up in the morning and it's all gone. Mm-hmm. But in reality, what happened was there was a knock at the door, and my beautiful sister opened the door. She had come several thousand miles to see me, and she just spent 2 or 3 days with me and helped me see some of the light that was all around me that I had ignored. You know, one day I said, "You think God's mad at me?" And she said, "No, He's not mad at you." You know, the first chapter of my book, I tell about my little granddaughter, Jaden, same little girl I was holding the hand at the beach. About a year later, she was lost in the mountains of Colorado, 14,500 feet. I'm sorry, 10,500 feet. She walked away from our campsite in absolute wilderness and was gone. And the terrifying moments, as I detail in the book, were absolutely horrible. I ran until I couldn't run anymore. I shouted her name until my voice was gone. Rescue teams were looking for her. Storms were coming in over the mountains. And she was finally rescued. And when I was reunited with her, the rescue team sent me a picture of me kneeling and holding her hands. And someone asked me in an interview, what were you saying to her as you held her hands? Oh. And no one had ever asked me that question, but I memorized what I said to her. It wasn't, "You're a bad girl," or "Why did you do that?" or "How many times have I told you?" All I could choke out was, "I love you." Yeah. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I still get, I love you, I love you.
Yeah.
And as those boiled out of my mouth, they echoed back to me, and I love you. I love you. I don't care about your success.
Wow.
I don't care about your, your retirement. I don't care about any of that. I care about you. I love you. And when you began to realize how much I love you, when you begin to nurture that relationship, the power of my resurrection is going to be demonstrated in you. I love you. And so the book is just stake after stake, moment after when God led me to this place.
Ken, how long was it from the time you started to where you are now? From you started, you realized through whether it was inspiration or desperation, you started to change to where you are now?
Oh, I think it started a little bit before the picture. I started to toy with getting in shape physically. I was always distressed over my inability to do things without falling on the ground. So I'm going to take a guess at this. I would say that overall it was about 7 years, but the last 4 years were the most impactful. I think years ago that I saw that picture in Destin, Florida, that was just the catalyst of it all. I mean, then I.
So what do you think your future is? I mean, I don't find the word retirement or quit in the Bible, so what are you going to do?
No, I'm going to retread. I'm not going to get 100,000 miles out of this body. It's not about. I probably won't look better into the future. When we were making the film Fully Alive, which was shown in 160 theaters around the country, some guy in a balcony yelled, "Show us your six-pack," because I mentioned that I had done the triathlon and lost a lot of weight. Perry, I don't have a six-pack. And you don't want to see them. I'm not going to show them. But it works. 3 days ago, I climbed 14,420-foot Mount Harvard in Colorado.
Wow.
Just whooping. Because I could do it. I could do it. I lost 2 tons. I don't care.
Wow.
There is such a thrill to rediscovering the power of discipline.
Wow.
I run 8 miles 3 times a week.
Wow.
It isn't 8 miles that requires the discipline. The discipline that's required is to get from the bed to the door. If I get to the door, next moment I'm standing, sweat dripping off of my face, going, man, I'm ready to conquer the day now. So those things have been absolute delight. Discipline, I think as Christians, we often think of it as a 4-letter word, a punishment for the have done wrong. And discipline is really what allows a quarterback to throw a football 80 yards. It's what allows a pianist to hire a concert hall in the palm of his hand. And it's what allows us to live fully alive.
Well, Ken, you are a delight and an inspiration. The book is called Fully Alive. There it is, Lighten Up and Live, a journey that will change your life. Let me encourage you to get a copy of this. Boy, it fits with the theme that we've been talking about here for quite some time, and that is change in your life. And Ken has gone through that. Ken, thank you, my friend. God bless you, and keep up the good work. We air your features here on the Dove Radio. People love them, love you. I've seen you several times at the NRB, and you do a great job. Thanks for what you're doing, and thanks for sharing this very personal part of your life. This is wonderful.
Thank you. The book is honest, and it's changing lives. Thank you so much for encouraging people to get it.